Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss on integration and testing of an embedded hardware firmware. So before getting into a integration part, we must have to understand what is firmware. Firmware is nothing but a software code written for the specific hardware to run. We call that code as a firmware, and hardware or the devices which physically present right as a system to perform the certain functionality of an embedded system. Once hardware and firmware is developed for the embedded system, the first step or immediate step we have to follow is integration of embedded hardware and firmware, and testing the particular hardware and firmware. Final embedded hardware basically constitutes a PCB with all necessary components affixed as per the original schematic diagram. And the embedded firmware basically represents control algorithm and configuring data which is necessary for the operation to perform, and it will help to produce a end product as a embedded system. Embedded firmware will be in a target processor or a controller, and it will be in a understandable format like machine language. So firmware basically we write it in a high level language or assembly language, and that will be converted to a machine language to make sure it is easily understandable for the processor or a controller, which we generally refer as target device. Target embedded hardware without a embedded in the firmware is a dumb device, and this device can't function properly. So if we try to power up the particular device, the behavior of the device is very unpredictable, and both embedded hardware and the firmware should be independently tested to make sure that individual level these devices or code should be function properly to fulfill the expectation of the overall system functionality. The functioning of the individual hardware sections can be tested by writing a small code which supposed to check the operation of the specified part, and the functionality of the embedded firmware can easily be checked by using integrated development environment tools. By simulating these particular code, which we call it as a firmware, we can using the IDE can check the memory contents, register details, status of the various flags, and registered stored data can easily be monitored, and it gives the approximate picture what happens inside the processor or controller, what are the status of various peripherals. So these details can be easily accessed by using a integrated development environment tool, and we can easily check the functionality of the firmware or correctness of that particular developed firmware for the target device. Let's discuss integration of hardware and firmware. So integration of the hardware and firmware basically deals with the embedding of firmware into the target board is nothing but it is the process of embedding the intelligence to a product. That means we are providing a intelligence in terms of firmware, which basically meant for the hardware. Okay. So now during this process, the embedded processor or controller used in the target board may or may not have built-in code memory. Let's discuss further on the same. For a non-operating system based embedded products, if the processor or a controller contain the internal memory in it, and the total size of the firmware code is fitting into that particular internal memory area, then the code memory is downloaded into the target controller processor straight away. But If the processor controller does not support built-in code memory, or the size of the firmware is exceeding the memory size supported by the target processor controller, then an external dedicated EPROM or flash memory chip is used to hold the firmware. So this chip is interfaced to a processor or a controller. So it's very simple. If the onboard in the case of non-operating system based embedded systems, then if the firmware size is less than the internal chip size, then we use that internal chip. Otherwise, external dedicated EPROM or flash memory is going to be used to hold the firmware. There are variety of techniques are used for embedding the firmware into a target board. For the non-operating system based embedded system, to store that firmware by using the technique like on-chip processor controller memory or off-chip memory. Out of circuit programming. Out of circuit programming is performed outside the target board. Here what we do is the processor or a memory chip into which the firmware needs to be embedded is taken out of the target board and additional device being considered, and we'll try to load the code firmware into that particular programming device. The programming device is a dedicated unit which contains necessary hardware circuit to generate the programming signals. The most of the programming devices available in the market are capable of programming different family devices. The programming device will be under the control of utility program running on the PC, and the connection between the PC and the programming devices happens through a parallel port interface RS232C USB or USB. Okay, let's get into a detailed discussion on this. So there are multiple steps noted right here. You can just go through the steps which we just followed. Similar steps are being followed in the laboratory. Okay, I'll take you through the overall concept of this out of circuit programming. Here you can see there is a PC connected to a device programmer, and from the PC we want to load that particular firmware onto a device programmer, where device programmer is coming with a circuit meant for the operation, but we have to select that particular device by choosing the right option right there in the PC. By giving a right inputs here at the PC, we can load the firmware onto the device programmer, and the device programmer will run that particular firmware on the a particular device. That is the simple way of achieving out of circuit programming. The major drawback of out of circuit programming is the high development time, and this entire concept is tedious and prone to chip damages. So the out of system programming technique is purely preferable when it is for a low cost applications, and we also look for the embedded systems which runs without an operating systems. In system programming with ISP, programming is done within a system. That means the firmware is embedded to a target device. Here we are not removing the program or a firmware from the target board. The prerequisite required is that the target device must have an ISP support. Along with that, the target board can be interfaced to a utility program running on the PC through a serial port. The serial protocols used for ISP may be Joint Test Act Group, that is JTAG, or Serial Peripheral Interface for the ISP. In system programming with SPI protocol, here the device with SPI serial peripheral interface and ISP in system programming support contains a built-in SPI interface and the on-chip EEPROM and flash memory. So the primary input out lines connecting between the target device and the CPU or a system could be as follow, that is master out slave in, master in slave out, system clock, reset of the target device or ground pin of the target device. Basically PC act as a master, target device act as a slave in the ISP. Program data sent from master out slave in pin of the target device, and the device acknowledgement is going to be originated from the target device by master in slave out pin. Along with that, system clock pin acts as the clock for the data transfer. Along with that, it is going to have a reset and ground pin. Utility program which is there on the PC side will generate the signals. Standard SPI ISP utilities are freely available in the internet. There is no need for coming with the own code. For ISP operations, the target device need to be power up in a predefined sequence, and here there are few points mentioned. These are the the sequence supposed to be followed for ATMEL 889S. Please go through these particular points mentioned below. The key player behind ISP is a boot ROM. Basically, this is a factory programmed memory. Boot ROM normally resides at the top end of the code memory, and it contains set of low-level instructions, APIs, and these APIs allows processor or a controller to perform flash memory programming, erasing, and reading operations. So the content of the boot ROM are provided by the chip manufacturer itself, and it can be masked according to a requirement in the embedded system. In application programming, basically it's a technique used by the firmware running on the target device to modify the code that to a selected part of that particular code running on the CPU. It is not a technique for first time embedding of user written firmware. It is only for modifying the written running firmware, that to a selective part of it. For example, updation of calibrated data, lookup tables, use of factory programmed chip. That means we can embed the firmware into a target processor at the time of manufacturing or at the time of fabrication itself. So once the firmware design is over, the firmware achieved operational stability, the firmware files can be forwarded to fabricators to embed that to a target processor. It is very much suitable where there is no much change happens in the firmware, but any updations, frequent updations required for any of the applications or embedded systems, then that point of time this method is not suitable. So far our discussion purely concentrated on non-operating system based devices. Now when we get into operating system based devices, then how do we embed firmware to the target? So that is the point to discuss here. In the case of operating system based device, the firmware can be embedded to a target using a of code called bootloader. Bootloader is nothing but a program which takes a control of the operating system and application firmware which is embedding, and copies the operating system image to a RAM of the system. So the bootloader for such embedded systems comes as a preloaded program, or it can be loaded to the memory using the various interfaces like JTAG. Bootloader contains necessary driver initialization to implement communication protocols such as I2C, TCP, So bootladder implements menu options for selecting the source for operating system image to load. For example, load from flash ROM, load from network, load through UART, like that. Once the communication link is established between the host and the target machine, the operating system image can directly be downloaded to the flash memory of the target device. So this once communication link is established, it is comparatively much easier to load the code to a target device. The next topic is board bring up. Once the firmware is embedded into a target board using one of the programming technique as we discussed so far, then we have to power up the board. If everything goes well on the first attempt itself, the board works well and the system is ready. But most often it won't happen for different reasons. The board may burn or blow up, or that may causes some overheating. All these reasons because of the mistake in connections. Connection being established in a reverse polarity may causes all these problems. The prototype or evaluation or production version of the device must be tested thoroughly. So we have to verify the embedded hardware and firmware functions properly as expected. So the bring up process basically includes several steps, like basic hardware spot checks, validation to make sure that the individual components or interconnects are perfectly operating, and basic firmware verification to make sure that the processor is fetching the code and the firmware execution is happening as expected. At the last point in the bring up process includes is that running advanced validation such as memory validations and signal integrity validation will result you the ability of performing the task. Here in this part, we are going to discuss on embedded system development environment. Embedded system development environment basically consists of development computer and integrated development environment IDE tool for embedded firmware development and debugging, and integrated design automation tool for developing the hardware design, and emulator hardware for debugging and the target board, signal sources like CRO, multimeter, logic analyzer, and target hardware. Let's get into integrated development environment. As I already said, basically it provides an environment for developing and designing the target processor to develop embedded firmware. This IDE software package contains text editor, cross compiler, linker, and debugger. The IDE may also provide interface to a target board and target processor or controller, flash memory programmer. It may have a command line based GUI. That's all about on IDE tool. The detailed discussion on Keel, Microvision IDE, and its overview, we keep it for a self study because we have already come across through Keel Microvision IDE in the laboratory. Disassembler or decompiler. Disassembler is a utility program which converts machine code into a target processor specific assembly codes. The process of converting machine code to a assembly code, we call it as disassembling. Decompiler is a utility program for translating the machine code into a corresponding high level language, just a reverse of compiler or cross compiler. These disassembler and decompilers are basically deployed in reverse engineering to understand the technology from the product. Disassembler and decompilers are powerful tools for analyzing the presence of malicious codes in the executable image, and also These disassembler and decompilers are available as either free tools readily available in the internet for download, and it is not possible for an disassembler or a decompiler to generate the exact replica of the original code, but it most often the source code can be matched to a original source code from which the binary code can be generated. Simulators and emulators are two important tools used in the embedded system development. Simulator is a software tool for simulating the various conditions for checking the functionalities of the application firmware. IDE itself will provide the simulator support, and they help debugging the firmware and checking the required functionality. In certain scenarios, simulator refers to a soft model of the embedded product. That mean to say, for example, if we are developing a embedded system which is handheld device, to test the functionality of that particular handheld device, we come up with a soft code or software form of model of the product, which with all the user interfaces corresponding to that particular handheld device. So we call that as a soft phone in this example. Coming to a emulator, it is a hardware device which basically emulates the functionality of the target device and allows real-time debugging of an embedded system in a hardware environment. The simulators features are as follows, like it is purely software based, does not require real target system, very primitive. That means the lack of features with respect to input output support, and lack of real time behavior. Let's get into advantage of simulator based debugging. So it no need for original target board. Yes, of course, the technique is purely replicating the entire target board as a soft code, and we only need is the memory map of various devices within the target board, and a real hardware is not required. Hence the firmware development can start well in advance. It saves the development time basically. Simulate the input output peripherals. The options to simulate various input output peripherals can edit the values of input output registers as well. It also simulates the abnormal conditions. Okay, we come up with different input values for any parameters during the debugging. Coming to limitations of simulator based debugging, the first one is deviation from real behavior. That means the developer may not be able to debug the firmware under all possible conditions. So, naturally not possible to come up with all the combinations of a real scenario. In that conditions, certain operating conditions, we may get some particular result and it not be the same as the actual hardware result for the firmware run. Coming to a lack of real timeliness, of course, the major limitation of simulator based debugging is that it is not real time in behavior. So in real time applications, this is one of the problem, because the output coming out of this particular models are totally unpredictable, which is not acceptable in the case of real time embedded systems. Emulators and debuggers. Debugging in embedded application is the process of diagnosing the firmware execution, monitoring the target processor, registers, and memory while the firmware is running, and checking in the signal from various buses of the embedded hardware. So we can classify the debugging as hardware debugging and firmware debugging. In the case of hardware debugging, it deals with the monitoring of various bus signals and checking the status line of the target hardware. Coming to a firmware debugging, it deals with examining the firmware execution and execution flow, the changes to a various CPU registers and status registers during the execution. Firmware debugging can be done in a multiple manner with the different techniques. So, firmware debugging is performed to figure out the bug or the error in the firmware, which basically creates the unexpected behavior. Firmware debugging is preferred to figure out the bug or a error in the firmware which creates the unexpected behavior. So there are different techniques to remove such errors. So the first one is incremental double EPROM burning technique. Here in this particular technique, this is one of the primitive type of firmware debugging technique where the code is separated into a different functional code units. Instead of burning entire functionality and corresponding code to a EEPROM chip, as we said, it divides the functionalities and corresponding codes. So on an incremental order, these codes are going to be burned to a EEPROM. Inline breakpoint based debugging is another primitive method of firmware debugging. Here we will try to insert a particular commands, could be a printf for example, to check whether the execution is reaching up to all the points. So if you want to check whether that point of code been executed or not, we will insert a printf statement for example on that particular part of the code. The next method is monitor program based firmware debugging. This is the first invasive method for firmware debugging. In this approach, the monitor program, which acts as a supervisor, and monitor program controls downloading of the user code into the code memory, and it inspects and modifies the register memory locations, and also it allows the single stepping of source code. That means the step by step execution. After that, the post effects of execution going to be checked through a monitor. The monitor program implements debug functions as per the predefined command set from the debug application interface. So the monitor program always listen to the serial port of the target device, and according to that the command received from the serial interface, the monitor program basically act according to the signal received. That means it may take actions like firmware downloading, memory inspection, modifications, firmware single stepping, and sends the debug informations. Monitor program contains certain features like uh, command set interface to establish a communication between debugging application and the host PC, firmware download option to a code memory, and examine and modify processor registers and working memory during the execution or post execution. Single step program executions, immediate after the execution of the single step, it checks the status of the execution and the register, set a breakpoint in firmware execution, so that we will get to know whether the critical section of the program is being executed or not. Send debug information to debug application running on the host machine. So these are the features. In circuit emulator based firmware debugging. The term simulator and emulator are sound similar. Basically, both working on debug the target firmware. Simulator is a software application that precisely duplicates the target CPU and simulates the various features and instructions supported by the target CPU. But emulator is self-contained hardware device which emulates the target CPU, and it connects between the host PC and the target device. Have a look at this particular emulator pod where you can see right there emulator device is a replica of the target CPU which receives various signals from the target board through a device adapter connected to the target board and perform the execution of the firmware under the control of debug commands. Let's try to understand a bit more detail on this particular emulator. So emulation memory. See, in the case of random access memory incorporated with the emulator device, basically mimics or replace the target board EEPROM. In the case of EEPROM, each time modification happens, supposed to be get updated. Rather than doing that, if ROM can be replaced EEPROM as a part of emulation, then that point of time we call that as or known as ROM emulation, so that any updation happens easily we can reprogram the ROM by burning it again and again. Emulator control logic is the logic circuit used for implementing the complex hardware breakpoints, trace buffer trigger detections, trace buffer control, and so on. By using the emulator control logic, we can easily implement the logic analyzer, and the emulator pod is connected to the target board through a device adapter and signal cable. Device adapter act as an interface between target board and the emulator pod. Device adapters are normally pin-to-pin compatible sockets which can be inserted or plugged into a target board for routing the various signals from pin assigned for the target processor. The device adapter is usually connected to a emulator pod using ribbon cables. You can have a look at that in the diagram also. As the advances happens in the semiconductor technology, it comes up with a new way of approaching the problems. As a part of that, on-chip firmware debugging process is one such advanced technique where the processor or controller incorporates built-in debug modules called on-chip debug support. Through OCD adds silicon complexity, cost factor from the developer perspective, but it is a very good feature which supports the fast and efficient firmware debugging. Even though the firmware is bug free, everything is intact in the board, your embedded product may not work or function correctly. There may be a different challenges for the designer, like signal corruption due to noise, misplaced components at the PCB layout design, or unnoticed error in the PCB layout, and so on. The hardware debugging is not similar to a firmware debugging. The hardware debugging involves monitoring various signals at the target board, checking the interconnection among the various components, circuit continuity checking, and so on. There are different primitive techniques to find out the problem at the hardware. The first simple technique is magnifying glass. Similar to a watch repairer, magnifying glass is the primary hardware debugging tool, where the magnifying glass is a powerful visual inspection tool. By using this particular tool, we can be able to find improper solderings, improper track or track damages, any shorting of the tracks, improper placement of the component. Multimeter is most widely used device. Is used for measuring the various electrical quantities like voltage, current, resistance, capacitance, and so on. It is the primary debugging tool for physical contact based hardware debugging, and almost all developers start debugging the hardware by using the multimeter. CRO, cathode ray oscilloscope, which we have already come across through and used this particular CRO in the laboratories. It is a little more sophisticated tool to capture all the signals, including digital signal and the analog signal. CRO is a very good tool in analyzing the interface noise in power supply line or any other signal lines. CROs are available in both analog and digital versions. Various measurements like phase amplitudes can be calculated using this particular digital CRO. Logic analyzer is the big brother of CRO. It can be used for capturing the digital data from the digital circuitry, where CRO is employed to capture all kinds of the waves. Logic analyzer contains special connectors and clips which can be attached to the target board for capturing the digital data. So the target board debugging applications and logic analyzer captures the states of various port pins, address bus and data bus. Logic analyzer give exact reflect of what happens when the particular line of code is running. So then that point of time it will check, we can check the values, exact values, digital values at the address bus or the data bus. Function generator is not the debugging tool, but during the process of debugging, sometime we need to have some input signal supposed to be generated. We use the function generator to generate such signals. This function generator is capable of producing various periodic waveforms like sine wave, square wave, sawtooth wave, and of different shapes. Sometimes the target board may require such kind of periodic waveforms. Function generators serves the purpose of generating and supplying required signals to this particular embedded system during the process of debugging. As the complexity of the hardware increases, the number of chips present in the board and the interconnection among them may also increases. So the device packages used in the PCBs are become more small, and to reduce the total board space occupied them, the multiple layers may be required to interconnect such miniature device packages. With the miniaturing of device packages, multiple layers of PCB, it will be very difficult to debug the hardware using the magnifying glass or multimeter. To check the interconnection among the various chips, we come up with a technique called boundary scan. It is a technique used for testing the interconnection among the various chips which suppose JTAG interface present in the board. Uh, JTAG port contains 5 signal lines, namely TDI, TD0, TCK, uh, TRST, and TMS from the test access port for JTAG support chip. uh, we will have the detailed block diagram of the same. Let's first try to understand how the signal connections are being made. Each device will have its own test access port. The PCB also contain test access port for connecting the JTAG signal lines of external world. Boundary scan path is formed inside the board by interconnecting the device through a JTAG signals. TDI pin of the TAP, TDI pin of the TAP of the PCB is connected to a TDI pin of the first device. You can see in the diagram the TDI of the TAP connected to a TDI of the IC device 1, and the TDI pin of the second device is connected to a TDO pin of the first device. Like that the connection goes, and along with that the clock line TCK and test mode select TMS line device are connected to a clock line and test mode select line of the test access port respectively. That means TAP's TMS line is connected to a TMS line of that particular device, and TCK is connected to a clock line. That is a common clock line across this particular device. That is what the entire concept of boundary scan is. Here what happens, the monitoring of the signal is much easier. Here in the boundary chain, the visualness of the signals will be much higher, and as we all accept that as the technology grows, the devices within the chip are so miniaturized, and the connection across such multiple packages are happening through multiple layers. So when we have the connectivity in different layers, monitoring of the signals which really matters, so that is being taken care by using a boundary scan technique. That's all about on module 5. Thank you.